Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome on this webinar. And the honor is ours to host this webinar on the future of HR technology. If we say we, then I have the honor indeed to introduce two of my colleagues over here, two people who are experts in the field, and together with them we would like to set up a discussion. Just making sure that you know whom these people are, because we do this together, Vlerick, together with Oracle. I would like to introduce them very briefly, or at least give them the floor to say whom they are. Raymond van Watering, welcome to this webinar. Can you just say a few words about what do you have with HR Tech?
Yeah, sure. I am the Director HCM Strategy for Oracle, which I think is a very interesting job, to say the least. Basically, it's about understanding what's happening in the world and what's the impact of all kinds of changes on HR, and more important, what opportunities that will bring. So in my daily job, I share ideas, I host workshops about employee experience, for example. And today, very happy to be a guest in this webinar.
So you feel like a fish in a pool right now. Huh?
Exactly.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. That's great. Next to him, and also welcome here, Oscar Lausecker, also working at Oracle. And yep. What do you have with HR Tech, Oscar?
Well, I have the same role as Raymond described, so I won't repeat that. But from my perspective, and what I find interesting is I have an history in HR. So for me, it's always very interesting to see how modern technology impacts the work I did 10, 15 years ago. So that's what my drive is. I try to help people, companies, HCM departments to use technology to get either better insights, more productivity, at least business benefits.
All right. Thank you very much. Good. Let me just say what are the rules of the game for this afternoon. First rule is we're going to start, or we have been starting a couple of minutes ago, and for sure we stop in 50 minutes. That's a deal we made to ourselves. Webinars are good if they're not too long. That's the first important point. Secondly, what we try to do in the preparation for this is we try to come up with certain statements, and these were also the statements that some of you might have found on the invitation, where we at least would like to have a discussion about. What is the value of these statements? Well, that we hope to see from your reactions. So please, as you know, you can react just by using your fingers and type some messages and or some questions and or some remarks. And please feel free to do so. The webinar does become much more interesting if we do kind of collaborate, all of us together. The 6 statements we have foreseen are those statements where we would like to start off with. If in the meanwhile, other important and or interesting statements do come from your sides, which we hope, then for sure we will take them. So there is no fixed format whatsoever. Basically, the underlying theme is the future of HR technology. Where are we and where will we go? And actually, we even added something like, are we moving from HR process automation over big data towards HR apps and chatbots? Question, meaning that HR tech finally becomes sympathetic. Maybe that explains why we have more than 100 people already talking or listening into this webinar. Now, that's an open question, and we hope to give the answer to this question in less than an hour, as I just promised you. So what I would suggest is that we go to the first statement. Just to make sure that we involve you in the subject matter, we will each time kind of give you the statement, and you see it right now on your screen. First statement being, in the near future, HR departments and practices have no chance to survive without big data. You have a 5-point scale. Feel free, just take 5 seconds to give your personal opinion on that. Would you agree? Would you not agree? Would you strongly agree? The floor is yours. And of course, we do follow up. 3, 2, 1. Off we go. What do we see? If we take the two together, there 30, 40, the 70, 80, 85% says somewhat agree versus and or strongly agree.
Yeah.
Raymond, reaction.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the speed of change when it comes to technology is really immense. If we see the speed of innovation, how easy it is nowadays to embrace certain technologies and how certain technologies are being combined. As such, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud, and also big data. So I think that it's indeed a big topic. I see a lot of discussions going on, and I think every organization should have it in the near future in order to survive. And the reason for that, I think, is that organizations where it was maybe some time ago were reinventing themselves, let's say every 7 years. I think now market circumstances are changing rapidly, and so rapidly that also organizations need to shift towards that market more rapidly. And I think a very important asset in that is also the power that big data can bring. Looking at so that is as a technology, and I also think that if you look at it from the loyalties of employees, is also very different opposed to what it was 10 years ago. So I think, and that is impacting attrition, and I think that big data can also be very important to leverage that, in specifically in attrition issues.
Would it then mean that, imagine that some HR departments would not be into big data, that they would disappear or not have impact anymore in the future? Oscar?
Well, I don't have the crystal ball, so disappear is maybe a bold statement. At the same time, I think companies that don't use that will be less successful, and less successful could mean at the end disappear. Why? I think if you touch the point which Raymond just said about the employee engagement and how long will people work at a company, people will, 20 years ago, people chose for a company and they work there or still work there until their pension. Today, people want to have a job that challenges them at that moment. And if that is changing tomorrow, they are open for new opportunities. If you use big data, if you use trends from the outside world, if you use data of things that might happen tomorrow or trends that you see happening today even, you can react on that actively, so proactively, instead of afterwards. So that means that you can create new roles. You need new types of people in your organization, and as an HR department, you can work on that and with that to be prepared for tomorrow. And that's what I always say. Don't look at being ready for today. Be ready for tomorrow. Although we don't know what tomorrow brings. Big data is essential in that perspective. It also means that HR departments needs to create different roles, because if you look at the more analytical part of analyzing big data, is something that HR is not really using today. So you need different kind of people in your department to bring that value to your company.
All right. Yeah. There's lots of reactions already, so sorry that I'm sometimes looking at my screen here, but let me first start. And Frank, thank you very much. Yes, you're right. He's saying voting depends, of course, of the audience. If you ask people to sit in a webinar on HR tech, and then they say, yes, it's going to happen. Yes, you're right. But of course, it's also interesting to see that the vast majority are believing. And then that's maybe Bert remark here. Bert is saying, I also wonder what the cost of is to work with big data, and linked to that, Laurent Lenoir says, yes, but considering this, maybe we should first define what do you mean by big data in HR. Could you kind of help us out a little bit in structuring this? Because I feel also in the world of practice, this is sometimes a discussion that's going on.
Yeah, right? Indeed. Big data, I think, we can come up with a new definition, because there are a lot of definitions out there. I think in the end, it comes down to combining data that we did not combine in the past. Because, when it comes to reporting or large volumes of data, that is what we are doing already for quite some time. But now it comes to really, combining data that we did not combine in the past, plus combining it maybe with external data. So external events will have an impact on organizations. What will an external event have as an impact on engagement in the end? If you ask that frequently, and you will create then new insights that you could not create before. I think that is, in my opinion, is much about big data. And I also saw the question about the cost. I think that typically in the past you could say, okay, if we are going to do a big data project, we were discussing data warehouse types of projects.
Technical things.
And I think that nowadays, if you look at solutions, that big data is already a part of these solutions.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe in addition, Dirk, I think a lot of companies use big data for their core. So, companies are used, let's take a retailer web shop. They are used to invest in data to ensure their sales for the future. If you look at HCM, at HR in general, you should follow that same road, and then it should work in the way that costs are not the driver, but it's the business benefit, so value, that is the driver.
Yeah.
So there should be a business case within your company to actually invest in big data or in technology, which should result on the productive side of the company, on the benefit side.
Because if you may compare, and I also see a question coming in from Mireia, I'll cover it in a minute, but if you look at other functional domains, then some people might argue you see it's moving somewhat faster. I take as an example marketing, sales, because that leads to dollars in the end. Somebody's arguing here, Mireia says, yes, but I'm working in a multinational company. We have lots of problems with data protection, depending on where we are in the world. Are these hindering factors, or are these problems that will be solved towards the future? How do you see that in your practice today?
I think, having discussions about security, data security, is something that we have, and will have always.
Yep.
But you can always question if it's a valid objection. In a lot of times, you see that objection due to fear and not due to reality. Because people raising, and I don't mean Mireia in this case, but people raising in general a question like that are the same people that do internet banking in the evening. So they don't have an issue with their own private data, but as long as it comes to a company, you see that in government organizations a lot. Then you get a discussion, but we are not allowed to go there. 9 out of 10 providers of technology have that secured. I think the main issue is if you combine data, then you have to make sure that there's no breach in the connection when you extract data from several sources, but you can work around that.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to take a final comment here because, if you see me watching another direction, I sometimes get some input here that I have to stop this question. I have to move on. So sorry, guys. It's not me trying to be unsympathetic, but Wilfried van Hay says, using an external event is obviously artificial intelligence. How will this impact HR as a service? Linking big data with artificial intelligence. And I know it's a buzzword today, but in your experience, what do we see happening in the HR world that might be organized in a completely different way towards the future because of what we see happening in the world of artificial intelligence?
I think if you look at how it will impact HR as a service, specifically the service that HR is delivering to its, let's say, its audience, its employees, its managers, its C-level, will not change a lot. In the end, because we are doing things in a different way. Although the self-service components that an employee needs to do will not change dramatically.
Right.
The only thing that will change is the insights that you can deliver for the organization, and get the organization quickly to adapt to not what is needed tomorrow, but in a few years, or quickly react on this external event I'm referring to.
Okay. Maybe, because actually I think it's all in the same line. If we might go to our second statement, because actually that is already an explanation of how the world might look differently in the future. Absent chatbots will completely change the nature of most of our HR processes. Once again, you do have here the scoring, so please come up with your votes. Once again, we take 5 seconds. Once again, we see a certain evolution. Might even be more extreme than the previous one. 3, 2, 1. Over we go. There we are. Yep, that's all right. Oh, once again, we have about 80%. 80% saying somewhat agreeing versus strongly agreeing. But we do have about 6-7% saying not really convinced.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most important one, the 80% or the 6-7%? Just in terms of the surprise for us.
I think the 8% is more important, because we need some convincing there, probably. Because I think that if you look at, will there be a change? Yes. We just discussed the service as such. Will that change? So the demand, so to say, for in a company, they will not change, but the service as such and the way this service is being delivered will change dramatically. I'm really convinced. And the statement says most of our HR processes, I would say, if not all of these processes. But really on depending on the size of a company as well. I think, in the old days, the big multinationals was just also in the chat are used to work with suites, of course.
Right.
And they will have a big advantage because basically we can combine finance data with HR data, etc. And we'll have an end-to-end process. Nevertheless, for smaller companies, I think now also with cloud, a lot of these technologies that we are combining also as a company, as Oracle, are now in reach, so to say, and very much easier to embrace and to deploy within a company. And therefore, I think they can also, if it's software or whatever it is, in the end, support HR processes. And it can also be a small app or a chatbot in this case.
Right.
And I think in reality, we are used to talk to chatbots already in our personal lives. So why don't we embrace that and deploy it in the company as well?
Because I see indeed that some people argue that anything we have been doing in the so-called click call phase in our, let's say, service center, that especially the click phase, that could be completely done by a chatbot, and that could be done by...
For sure. Yeah.
And actually in some organizations already is moving into that direction.
Absolutely. And so at your first question, which you said, what is the most interesting group if you compare the two, people thinking it will not happen. My only remark would be, look at your own private life. We already use modern technology. We already talk to our smartphone, iPad to give them assignments. That will happen in every company today, tomorrow, in the upcoming years, and especially help desk. If you look at the help desk function, and there big data comes in again. If I have a question about a certain topic today, I would call, or I can look. If we have something in the middle, I can search on an intranet for typical asked questions about my topic.
Right.
But I'm an individual. My environment is not the same as yours. So my question, of course, I think is different than the same question that you will have. So if a system would recognize me, know my interests, know my background, know the history, know what I was looking for yesterday, and can help me providing an answer tailored on my specific situation, so on Oscar Lauzegger and not on a group of employees, that will happen. And it will bring two things. It will bring engagement from my perspective as an employee, because my company understands me. It recognizes me. I'm not a personnel number. And it brings, if you come from the other side, it brings cost reduction for a company in general. And today that is, I think in the near future, logical for a first-line help desk. But we discussed this morning from a radio show that we heard in the Netherlands about the impact from technology. With machine learning, I don't believe, or I don't foresee today that we will have the same for the second-line help desk. But let's create a middle layer, the first and a half line help desk. A lot of more intelligent questions, due to machine learning, for example, can be answered by a chatbot and data.
I have here an interesting question. Now, I'm just looking at my technician, because now I'm going to stretch him like hell. But somebody is asking here, and I think, Bert, it's you. Where is it? The question here. Oops, got to go back. In any case, the question was, is somebody already using chatbots in HR in today's organization? Ben, would it be possible just to get the poll into the screen? Can we just check? And I know we only have a 5-point poll here, but let's do the following. If you're not using it, then you use strongly disagree. If you are thinking about it, but you don't use it yet, then you use somewhat disagree. If you are thinking about it, but you're in the process of, then you do somewhat agree. And if you do use it already, you do strongly agree.
Yep.
Thanks for the flexibility, Ben. He will kill me later on, but that's fine for now. And what I just want to say, because that might be an interesting thing, just to feel what we already have today. And we see indeed a scatter plot. 3, 2, 1, let's stop. Okay. All right. Reinterpreting my classes. So that would mean we have about 25% who says we're not using it today and we haven't been considering it. We have 22% saying we're not using it, but we are considering it. That number is growing up to 25. We have 28%, that's about 30% saying we are thinking about it and we're in the process. And we have about 14% using it already. And yes, once again, Frank, coming to your comment, we are, of course, the Olympic winners now of the HR tech world.
Yep.
These are the people listening. But it might give kind of. Are you surprised, gentlemen? Because
I'm not surprised if you look at the research. On the one hand, you see that, we found some statements in the past that about 80% of the companies will have chatbots deployed in 2020, which is around the corner, so to say. So if it's 80% and I see now already 1/4, then I'm not surprised. If you look at the types of companies, I think you would need a certain volume, of course, indeed, to have a chatbot to deliver the maximum results on that and to have effect on the HR organization. Nevertheless, also as said earlier, due to these technologies, what was in the past, for the real big companies is now getting, going down. And it's much what we see. Also in the discussions that we are having with a lot of companies, we still see it as a topic that is being discussed a lot.
Okay. So it doesn't surprise you at all, so to speak.
No.
All right. I'm just checking here. Okay. I think we checked out on these ones. Good. I would suggest that we move on to the third one. There we go. The third one being, due to technological opportunities and commuting difficulties, candidates will have a distant e-interview rather than face-to-face job interviews in the near future. And be careful, this one is, I think, in our preparation, we use this as an example of how HR processes might not only change, but also what we consider to be politeness or normal behavior that might change throughout time. The point we want to raise here is indeed that if you would not do this, meaning if you would still invite candidates, that probably some of the better candidates would say, but how old-fashioned are you? Question mark. Are we dreamers, or do you already see this happening? And please, if you have strong ideas, one or the other direction, ventilate them so we can work with them. We're just checking out the numbers here. The good thing is nobody is neutral on this one. That's the first thing we see.
We all have an opinion.
3, 2, 1, and we close down by now. Up we go. There's something magical this afternoon about the 85%, because once again, we have about 85%. But the most important finding is the strongly agreeing category is the biggest category, about 50%. So half of the people say this is going to become very, very normal. Opening this up a little bit, because what does this actually mean? And because then some people might argue, but is HR not going to be much more distant, much more cooler, much more transactional? Is that a risk, or how do you look at it?
Okay. Well, I think it's I think a couple of things. I think a lot, but now I think a couple of things. One is it strongly depends on the type of organization. Not so much the if it's a big organization or small, but the type. So if you're very local organized, or you are a production company or a retailer for a shop, a local retailer, so not a big brand but a local one, it will not happen. At the same time, a lot of local companies, and you see that especially in the Benelux, because we need to expand to other countries. We are getting international, and international could mean only Germany or France or Luxembourg, but we are international. And from that perspective, I think it saves time. But even stronger, people have to sell in this way because it's the modern world. We just talked about using big data or modern apps in HCM. Why? Because it's used in the outside world. Why? Because customers of companies use that. That means that those same customers are employees as well. So if you would not serve them in the way they are served in their private life, they would think you are an old-fashioned company, and that would or could mean that you will not attract that typical talent that you want to attract. So from that perspective, I think it's an essential part, even though you maybe don't need to do it as a company. I would still strongly advise to do it.
Yeah, and I think also if you look at it from a, we are collaborating in a digital way currently in our personal lives already via WhatsApp or whatever. Doing FaceTime with, did it yesterday evening with my parents who are in Spain currently. We're on FaceTime. And that's the way that we interact with each other, person to person.
Yeah.
So why don't we embrace this technology again? To use it within the boundaries of our organization. On the other hand, if you look at, I worked previously in a smaller Oracle partner called Quistor. It was not a large company, and before that in Deloitte, which is a large company. If we look at it, how many, and in Oracle is a large company as well. If we look at it, how many WebEx that we do a day, it's also a skill to host a WebEx, with 20 people in it, or to host a conference call in a proper way. So I think, making it part of, if it's needed in a job, making it part of a job interview process, I think is a very good thing to do as well.
Yeah. I get lots of reactions on this one I see. So many people say indeed it's good for a first interview, but probably somewhere throughout the process you need to see the candidate. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Although I would even argue on this one that for some people, a little bit in line with what you said, we see some of our youngsters here where the virtual inclusion is more important than the real inclusion, meaning in reality. They're so used to do these things in a virtual way.
Exactly.
And that's one of the arguments that I see here too. It's a win-win, not only for the company, but also for the candidate, because why would I have to commute? And also in terms of politeness, having such a chat of 15 minutes is polite. Inviting somebody to come to Amsterdam or to Brussels, having to drive for 2 hours, and then after 15 minutes say thank you very much. That's kind of weird today.
It's polite in the old world.
Yeah. And even we're not even talking international, we're talking local, because so even there we might see that that because of what is technologically possible, the politeness rules do change. And that's where I do feel that indeed, and of course technology has to follow. Meaning Skype talk where every 5 minutes you lose connection, that's not going to be the best interview. But we see that more and more we have very stable solutions there that provide us with the means of doing what we have to do there. If I may ask, and I know we are going to come to some of it later on too, but if you would look at the sub-HR fields where you might expect the biggest change to happen because of technology, would there be a hierarchy in there? Would there be a subfield where you say, I expect this more than in others? Because
I think, if you look at the subfield, I think for specifically compensation and benefits, I foresee a lot of changes due to big data and artificial intelligence, machine learning. I think machines can learn a lot about the patterns that are out there, remuneration processes, etc., can be automated more as we are doing nowadays. I had a discussion with a candidate a few months back, and of course asked, reason why, etc., the interest, and said, frankly, I want to move over. And so he did a bump and bend role at that point, because this role will disappear in the future. It was a very, solid statement that we had a discussion about, which I like, by the way, but it was very good. So I think in that area will change a lot. Indeed, the click call view. So in the end, the service processes for HR towards an employee to service them better. I think that will have there will be a huge impact from a technology point of view, but also from a service point of view. And also the insights that we discussed earlier, which it was I think was the first statement, the new insights that will be visible due to big data and combining different data components that we did not do in the past. I think that for me is three areas that really stand out, and on top of that maybe recruiting as well, and not only recruiting. Let's
think about learning. So what could be very interesting is if you're today organizing all the training programs and learning modules for your company, which is for sure a person. What would happen if big data and machine learning and new performance, which we will touch with another statement later on, would be combined, and that would result in automatically being advised which training you should follow and how you should follow it. For you, it's better to do it in class. For you, it's better to do digital or via iLearning or via Snap videos on YouTube.
Sure.
So I think, and that's something that is out of the box from that perspective, where a lot of people will not think about today, but a role like that even could be replaced or partly replaced by apps and data.
Yeah, that was an interesting. I'm just looking here. Bert is suggesting. I personally think that we can skip humans for the first round. purely.
Well, yeah.
Which, and once again, it's not so much I think the technology, but if we do it in a personalized way, then people might like it. I think we have seen years ago that in some organizations going to an interview meant sitting behind a computer and filling out all kinds of tests. We came back from it because some people found it too much depersonalized. But here you can personalize. It's not because it's over online tools, whatever, that you cannot personalize it, where there cannot be a contact between two individuals. So that's the big advantage that I see here.
That's true. And at the same time, and in addition, Dirk, I got two twin girls, 11 years old. When I was 11 or then 20 later on, I could, if someone would say bluntly no to me, you could be upset. Generations today, they don't care.
Sure.
No is an answer. And it's quite clear. So no, okay, I can move on to the next part. So if you would have, and I agree with Bert, if you would have a digital shift in the first one, which is just a blunt no after answering 4 or 5 questions, fine, it's clear. Move on to the next.
Good. Very interesting, but once again, I guess a sign that we need to move on. So we move to the fourth statement, if that's okay. And the fourth statement, here is coming. Feedback apps, and once again, we move from selection towards the feedback world. Feedback apps are changing completely the performance review cycle in organizations. This one is indeed based on what we have seen over the last couple of years. Some organizations criticizing their whole performance let's say management cycle. The question that we would like to introduce here is, but our apps are they going to take over? And that's, I think, where we also would like to put the emphasis upon. But once again, we'll listen to the votes before we say anything. Once again, the last 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Off we go. People are still changing minds. There we have it. This time we have only 75% instead of the 80%. So we're going down a little bit. But it would be interesting. And may I urge the 13% who's saying somewhat disagree up to strongly disagree, the main argument. So it's just that we understand a little bit, because it's not because we're throwing away something that automatically will be replaced by something else. But let's first try to understand, what do apps do today, which actually this traditional system was not doing, in what you hear in your practice?
Yeah, I think overall, I think a lot of companies indeed are struggling with their current performance management processes. And I think a lot also has to do, in some cases it has to do also with the admin part that comes to it.
Sure.
Because if you look at it from a manager or employee perspective, it's not a top priority in the end. And that is because it's basically done every half year, or in some organizations, only once a year. So in the end, it's about a conversation that we have in about, let's say, 30 minutes or 1 hour. And we are rewinding, going back 1 year and discussing what happened in the whole full year. So how clear can that picture indeed be? And I would say that the organizations that are struggling with this performance review cycle are also looking at alternatives. And I don't see the current performance cycles change. But as an addition, I think feedback apps can change, or regular check-ins can change, at least to have a proper discussion that you would still have to capture the results of what happened in the half year or the full year, and that the feedback apps or the check-ins will be an input for that final result.
For that final talk.
And I think also the performance or the appraisal process, if you look at it, how it's being captured and entered in a system, can be, well, sometimes it's cumbersome at best, I would say. So that can change dramatically, and I think feedback apps are indeed changing, but not completely replacing the performance review cycle in organizations.
Let me just check, because we have some very strong arguments here. By strong arguments, I mean strong opinions. Some people saying, yes, but we're talking about evaluation of people, and that's all about having a good talk, a manager with an employee. And I don't think that we do not agree on this. That's clearly what it is. But indeed, apps could add something, and they could take away a little bit the administrative burden that we might see in today's world. An app can support continuous feedback employees give to each other. And I think, thank you very much for that remark, Anja. Because once again, I think if you look at the next generation, it's the need of getting constant feedback.
Absolutely.
And that is where the app gives an answer to a need which is actually already existing. But
I fully agree, and even stronger, it's not only crucial for the new employee or the upcoming generations. I think it's crucial for the survivement of organizations. Why?
Yeah.
If you would have continuous feedback, that would mean that you could have a continuous change on your development.
Right.
That could mean that, my development need today is different than in 12 months when I have my performance review.
Yeah.
So I already learn on the job or on my own way what I am lacking today. So if you would have a continuous feedback conversation via an app, which delivers all kind of inputs, it helps you on your development, which helps the company.
Right.
I want to answer on the first statement.
Sure.
Yes, I agree. The performance review is about a personal conversation, but it should be an objective conversation. I really don't see any value in having a conversation with my manager on the 1st of June when our new fiscal starts about what I did June last year. Let's be honest. I don't care. If I have made a mistake, then
it's too much backwards driven.
So I want to have interaction. It's not replacing the human part of a one-on-one interaction for sure.
Hopefully
crucial.
Not, yeah.
Hopefully not. I don't foresee that. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But it makes the quality of a performance cycle much higher.
Yeah. So we indeed see that we have a solution today within technology that actually services a basic need in HR that has changed over time, namely the need of that, what somebody called here, Mireille, constant feedback. Indeed, that's the crux of the matter. And based on that, we see that, and we win on the admin side because we don't have this administrative burden anymore on our shoulder.
Yep.
And I see it's also a combination of big data because what those apps do in the end, they aggregate big data throughout.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
That sounds like a win for every side. Let me just see whether somebody's disagreeing. Wait, Wesley. The key differentiator is how the manager gives the feedback, not the app. Support your managers on this topic.
I fully agree.
Yes.
Indeed, in the end, it's a human task, and technology is just supporting. And as I said previously, if it's an app or whatever it is in the end, that is there for easy capturing of data.
Yeah.
That is a result of a personal conversation that you are having. Indeed, to steer more quickly, I would say, and also to build a better total overview of what in the end will be part of the performance review.
Yeah.
And that can be, again, also improved.
So it will be a combination in the future. Yes, I think the objective data of an app will give a certain inputs, but can never look at the personal circumstances of the employee.
Yeah.
Which will interfere, which have an impact on my performance. If I'm in a sad mood, something happened at home, it's likely that I will perform less. An app will not look at that. That will only look at my performance. So I for sure agree that the human part is essential and crucial in the future, and the way managers have that conversation is essential. Apps can help that manager in getting better conversations. I think the data should be used only for having an objective look at what happened.
We should avoid that the manager is going to say, talk to the app.
Exactly.
Talking to me. Yeah. And in that respect, Hans, thank you very much. But an interesting insight might be is we need probably also to support employees to ask for feedback. What we see also in the world of apps is that apart from the giving feedback, the feedback seeking behavior can be kind of introduced or pushed or planned a little bit by using those apps. I mean, I can search for feedback and I can make my boss feel guilty if he's not giving feedback as much as some other bosses might be doing.
Yeah, and what is funny about that is that I think employees are ready for that.
Yeah.
Companies aren't. I think employees want to have an interactive feedback session. I want to tell my opinion about you as my manager and why things went, how they went.
Right.
But I want to learn from you and your feedback.
Yeah.
So if you would, for example, and we do that in our private life, we like or dislike pictures on Facebook. We can do that in our performance cycle as well. We can use social tools to motivate people or to help people get on the right track quite easily. Yeah.
So actually, we're here saying that HR can be sympathetic by using something that people are actually waiting for.
Exactly.
Which is not always the case. Can we say so?
No, which should be the case, but not always is the case.
No, and I think we should be careful in some of the statements that we think that technology will replace a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's still human capital management, as we call it,
Sure.
HR. It's still about human beings and having fair conversations. on the same hand, having different tools available that we didn't have available in the past.
Right. Martin is asking a question on this, and he says, are all generations ready for app feedback at large? I mean, in your experience, because we also see sometimes some let's call it resistance is maybe too strong, but some people that have like what we call a cold water risk, they don't dare to. What is your experience in there, Oscar?
I would say all generations could be ready. Not everybody is ready. So that's a big difference. So, I know people in their 60s who are more modern than I am in using technology. I see people in their 30s who are not. So I think generation is not the statement, which is, by the way, a remark that a lot of companies use as an excuse. We have a lot of people 50 plus. That's why we are not that modern, because, they can't handle that. I think that's ridiculous, and it's not true. I think, because those same people use digital in their outside life, in their private life. So I don't think that generations are, you can exclude generations. We have the challenge today, or not the issue, the challenge, that we have multiple generations on the workforce. So you need to look very carefully as a company, how you look at your individual employee and how you help them and provide them with apps or not.
Right.
Give them a choice in a transition period.
Well, I think as a company, you have different generations to serve. Huh? Sure. You have different organizations, different generations within the organization. So it's not just one generation or the younger generation that we are going to address. It's the full spectrum.
Right. Right. Good. Sorry to interrupt you, but I once again heard kind of a jingle coming from the other side of the room. So that means we have to go forward, and we go to our fifth statement. Once again, let me motivate you. If you do have a statement, if something is on your mind where you think this is actually very important, and I would like to have some reactions and or some insights, both from the panel, but also from the people listening, and there's lots of reactions coming over, please feel free to do so. In the meanwhile, I'm getting late here because people are already voting, and I haven't read it yet. In the near future, most of us will have a robot as a colleague. This is no longer science fiction. This is the last time that Raymond and Oscar are sitting here. Next time, one of the two will not be here, but there will be a robot. Yeah. That's actually what we're questioning. Huh?
Or you?
Yeah, or me. Oh, yeah.
Let's try that first, then, Dirk. Yes.
Right. Good. 3, 2, 1. Can we close down? Thank you very much. You heard somewhat more scattered. Just put it short. We have about 40. Is that? Yeah. Both. We got believers and disbelievers. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's about 50-50. Yeah?
It's about 50-50 on the okay side, agree side, but also on the disagree side. Yeah. Can we ask some qualitative feedback? So please give your most important argument why you would say, yes, it's like that, or why you for sure believe it's not going to be like that. In your opinion, what do you see happening in the world?
I see happening in the world that we are already using robots a lot. I think there was an article in the Gazette. It was 12 years old, and I used that in a presentation some time back. So this is about robots. So we're discussing robots already for a very long time. If you look at it in different sectors, industries, the surgery has been done a lot with robots. If you look at it in hospitals, they are using in the Jesse Hospital, for example, in Limburg, they are using also a robot for rehabilitation. There are lots of different appliances when it comes to robot. A robot not necessarily needs to look as like a robot. So the exoskeletons, for example, that help people to lift heavy stuff is also some kind of robot. Well, there are, I think, many different examples of robots.
Look at pharmaceutical, dispatching of medicines is 9 out of 10 times, at least in the Netherlands, already done by robots. So I think when we ask this question, I think a lot of people think about robots looking like you and me. Yes, or I agree with the 50%. We will say that will not happen. We'll not have all kinds of Arnold Schwarzeneggers walking around that are half machine, half man. At the same time, it is practice today. It is already there, and it will happen more and more and more and more.
Somebody was arguing what is the near future, but let's agree on that about 5 years from now.
Yeah, well,
or is that?
I think it maybe it even goes for today. Yeah, it goes for today. In certain areas of work, it's already there. People already have a robot as a colleague, and I would say in the upcoming 5, 6 years.
Yep.
Again, not a crystal ball. Maybe everyone has at least one.
Yeah, they for sure will look differently than we expect. And when we're discussing artificial intelligence and machine learning, is that a robot as well? I think the human brain is to a certain extent limited to what we can
Yep.
capture and understand, and
Yep.
and get out of it. So in the end, is that the definition of a robot as well? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, we got some strong opinions here. If you don't mind, I'm going to confront you with that. Two people saying here, don't forget we are in human in HR title, or there is human in the title
Absolutely.
of HR. Somebody else is adding to that. Yes, we are in human resources. I don't see that part of our job being handled by robots. Could it be in the end that robots do show more emotional intelligence than human beings? Because of machine learning, because of...
I don't know.
I see some people hoping that maybe we would find a robot to negotiate with our unions, for example.
Well, maybe that could happen based on big data. You never know.
I'm going to get some strong reactions here.
Yeah. I think. So one, I think this statement is not based on us in HR with a robot as colleague, but in general, people in work life have a robot as a colleague. So human resource will not be robot resource.
Yeah.
Although there are companies, production environmental, look at car manufacturers, where more robots work than people. So,
True.
But at the end, human resource will always be about humans because the robots don't need an evaluation, they don't need a performance. So that's the good thing about robots.
Yeah.
I don't think they will, although you have machine learning, they will never use the way they are programmed like we use our brain, with all the benefits, but also all the downsides that we have with humans using our brain. So I don't think it is a competition. I think work will shift. Things that can be programmed or with maybe less machine learning parts will be transformed to robot work. Or even look at surgery where it's essential and crucial. In brain surgery, I can imagine, that opening could be done by a surgeon. And again, I'm not a medical person.
No.
But going inside the brain to get a fragment out, which with the smallest movement of your hand could be a catastrophe, that could be done by a robot at the end of the day. And so I think it will help us do our job better, perform better, and have less risk of errors.
Yeah.
I think.
So I think if we come back to the statement, we'll have a robot as a colleague. Yeah, considering that a lot of people are working in HR and have a very strong interest in IT, hence attending this webinar.
That's right.
Yeah, if you look at it like that, a robot as an HR colleague, I won't see that happening myself. But again, I don't have a crystal ball, but I see that robots are having an impact on organizations and therefore have an impact on specific jobs that we have currently.
Yeah. Let me just envision a case, because I see here some remarks which I would like. Some people are arguing, yes, that's fine for the robot as long as he takes away my routine work, but I'll do the interesting part.
Mm-hmm.
I'm combined now, sorry, Claudia and Katrien, to combine your comments, but could it ever be that I go to my robot, to my computer, to whatever, I ask the question, look, over the last 10, 20 years, which were the people who had a burnout, try to find the facts and figures based on your big data, and give me an advice. I once again have a case of somebody in burnout in front of me. What should that person do?
Mm-hmm.
How far is that world away from us? Technical
scene, I think not very far. Once we capture everything in big data, that's something that you could do. If that is what I want, at least, let's put it from my perspective, no. Why? Because there's always the human brain is always needed to make the right interpretation. So from that perspective, that robot could give in a split second the information needed, which you and I need 2 days to collect. So big benefit. It can also say, based on the facts, you should do ABC, but it can never make the interpretation of you as an individual and how to go with that. So I think that is a difference that, at least I hope, let's put it that way, although I work in an environment where we use technology, I hope it will never take out the human factor.
Yeah, but it could be that the HR officer is here, the interface, getting this message for the computer, filtering it with
And that comes back
own insights,
exactly.
and then communicating it in a credible way towards
Could
the
be.
coworker.
Yeah.
Could be, and I
Yeah.
think that, and I saw it also some remarks in the chat already. I think a lot of discussion will go on about also the data privacy, etc.
True.
And what can be extracted from or correlations we can see in data, and which are basically a no-go area. Because if you look at the power of some of these technologies, it can be scary as well.
And that's the big difference, Dirk, to close up this statement.
Yeah,
is the big difference.
You heard the jingle too.
Exactly. Looking back at 100 years ago when we opened the first car factory by Ford, people were working there. If you look 60 years ago, machines were helping people. True. If you look today, machines are doing the work and people looking at the machines if they do the right thing. So it is not new, but exactly what Raymond said, the technology change in the last 10 years is a huge factor bigger than we had in the 40 years before that. And that makes it scary for everybody.
And that leads us all to our last statement, if I may. Last statement being, technology will extend self-service processes. As a result, it will place HR closer to the heart of the business. So once again, technology will extend self-service processes, and as a result, it will place HR closer to the heart of the business. Would you agree? Would you disagree? What are some of the opportunities? What are some of the major threats you might see? And once again, we're looking at the poll results. 3, 2, 1. We're going to close down. Yes. Almost. We almost made it to the 90%. And it is getting to the 90% by now. 90% does agree, somewhat agree with this. Can we call them the techno-optimists?
No, I think they are
realistic.
Yeah.
Okay. No.
Indeed, I think if you look at self-service processes, these are being digitalized more and more. And I think that if you look at it, mobile is facilitating a lot, making these self-service processes more easy to execute. On the other hand, I think that a digital process is something compared to a manual process or paper process is indeed not HR transformation or digital HR per se. It's also some of these buzzwords, I would say. So I think that is really a difference, that technology will extend indeed self-service processes and will bring HR close to the business, but I think there's a big plus as well. Right? We can do more even than
what we used to do, actually.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think good statement, Raymond, about embedding self-service is not HR transformation. A big thing that companies really think we are in a transformation. What did you do? Well, we automated paper processes to digital. Okay, cool. What will happen, if you have that automated process, and then look at an example, you are a company, a 24-hour open company, 7 days a week, and you have a lot of youngsters working in your company, and so it could be a retailer open 24 hours, could be a production environment, whatever. And then people, youngsters go out, so they want to go to a concert, and then they want, but they work that evening, so they want to swap their shifts. That's not a self-service application today. Will never be, because it's a combination of data from the core system and rostering.
Right.
What if you would build an app which works together with your HR application, where people can say, okay, I have a shift tomorrow, I can't work, who can take over? Some people in the organization can say, okay, I would like to take over. The manager would approve that swap, and then it goes into the system. I think 3 things will happen. Today, the manager will be called, the operational manager will be called, and therefore we'll spend a lot of time making sure that someone works that shift. And 2, if it is a negative because you can't reach people, the people can't go, that person can't go to a concert. If you would combine this, the manager could focus on his work and not shift swapping. The person getting rid of his shift is happy, he's going to the concert. The person accepting that shift, you could give kudos or smiles or whatever. You could invent a gamification around that. But at the end of the day, it impacts the business productivity.
Yeah.
So self-service at itself will not improve productivity in the entire company, because what it did is it took work from department A and implemented that same work in department B. That's it.
Yeah.
Fine. If you would use technology, you can
Yeah.
actually be more productive or have an impact on the business. I think that's a big change.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Indeed, thanks for that comment, Alberto, because I see some people arguing, indeed, if we look at what's happening in the private lives of people, that quite often they're much more used to technology than what we think and or how we treat them within
For sure.
HR in the organization.
For sure.
So that optimism is indeed realism if you look at what is happening at their own sake. And then indeed the use of apps and the use of things whereby you can plan and you can do and coordinate some of those things might even go way much further than we are doing today.
Oh, but
it's even stronger. Maybe in the end, an employee expects these kinds of services within a company as well.
Yeah.
Because we are using it for the last a couple of years. Basically, if I am on Spotify and I like a lot of music and I play some music in the morning when I wake up, I'm there's obviously a very tough algorithm behind it.
Yep,
but Spotify comes up with very nice music that I really like.
For you.
The right music for me at the right time.
Yeah.
So indeed, if I am in an HR system and I have, I'm in the middle of, I'm a hiring manager and I have a candidate coming up in a couple of weeks because I'm hiring, for example, a marketing intern, then and the system would say, okay, we recommend this kind of learning because you can do a proper interview for a marketing intern.
Yeah, true.
All these data is known already. So why isn't it pushed currently in a lot of other systems? We have this capability already, as we are really think that also learning is not really a separate thing. Learning is throughout.
Yeah. A final remark I see here from Frank, and Frank, I opened with you, so let me also close with you. He says, yes, I even do believe that we need technology not only to manage our own people, but also to manage what he calls a total talent cloud, including free agents, contractors, and the difference between in and out of the organization blurs also. So also, therefore, it might give
something that for sure, I think something that will happen in the future. Do you then really work with employees, or do you work with a pool of people that can help you as a company?
Right.
Is it then really important that you are an employee? And I know in some countries like the Netherlands, like Belgium, like France, talking about this with unions, not the very best thing to do.
No. But then again,
it's going to happen.
Looking at people's life and what they're doing in their personal life is actually what is happening.
Exactly. So that will happen in companies. And I think you made a statement a couple of months ago, Raymond, when we discussed, people are the first changers in business life. Right. Companies will adapt. Governance will always come later, and then law and legislation is the last to follow. Right. So what we do today will be adopted by companies in the upcoming 5-10 years, will be adopted by governments in the upcoming 10-15 years, will be new legislation in the upcoming 20-25 years. Will happen, for sure.
Good. Guys, we're getting to an end. We made a promise that we would not take 1 hour, so that means we have to close down in this minute, because otherwise it's going to be an hour. But first of all, I would like to thank you for all the insights. It is clear from what we heard, I think, so far that the future of HR or the future of HR tech, we ain't seen nothing yet. And that's also very much what we felt with the audience that we had. Thank you very much to all of you who have been participating, who have been actively writing. Please, I hope you had also some time to eat your sandwich over noon. But it was good to see there were so many reactions going on. I hope you liked it. I hope it was insightful. Please let us know. Give us some feedback. We also like to get some feedback, because that would also mean that in the future we could do similar things, unrelated topics, or even go somewhat further. I would like to thank the two colleagues of Oracle, Raymond and Oscar. Thank you very much. Hope to see you again in the same format and talk about other things that might be related to what both of us are looking at. Thank you very much, Ben. And now it's time to kill me. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.